Good morning. I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to our August edition of our Government Affairs Committee. I have with me this morning Alberto Sandoval, the head of our Government Affairs Committee, and he'll be introducing our speaker in just a moment. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. If you have any questions for our speaker this morning, we have a great speaker, Kome Ajize with Southern California Association of Governments. We ask that you put your questions into the Q&A box, and at the end of Kome's presentation, we'll be asking him those questions in addition to maybe one or two others that Alberto and I can think of during this presentation. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over to Alberto. I'll have some closing comments at the end and tell you about some of our upcoming programs as well. So Alberto, take it away.
Well, thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Government Affairs Committee meeting. We welcome our guest speaker this morning, Kome Ajize, who's the Executive Director of the Southern California Association of Governments. Formerly, he has 3 decades of experience in regional planning and transportation, most recently as the Director of Planning at SCAG. Prior to working at SCAG, Kome was Chief Deputy Director at Caltrans, where he was responsible for internal operations with a budget in excess of $1.1 billion. Previously at Caltrans, he was Deputy Director of Planning and Modal Programs. Kome has a Bachelor of Science degree in Geography and Regional Planning from the University of Benin, Nigeria, and a Master of City and Regional Planning degree from Cal State University, Fresno. The Bulldogs, I believe, no? Well, Kome, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, Bulldogs. Thank you, Alberto, for that generous introduction, and thank you, Steve, and all for the invitation. Good morning, everybody. Like I was introduced, my name is Kome Ajize. I'm the Executive Director at the Southern California Association of Governments, otherwise known as SCAG. And what I hope to do this morning is to take you through some of the work that we are doing at SCAG as quickly as I can, walk through those slides so that we can get to your questions. What we're going to try and talk through today is our what we call Connect SoCal, which is the Regional Transportation Plan, Sustainable Community Strategies. It's one of the primary assignments that we have at SCAG on behalf of the entire region to produce this every 4 years. It's a long-range vision for transportation and a combination of land use as well over the next 20-25 years. Connect SoCal, the latest one was published last year, and we're working on the 2024. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about some local projects that may be familiar to you in the area that are in the plan or part of our planning. We'll talk about what we're seeing in terms of the future of the office, the return to the office, and what that looks like post-pandemic. It's an evolving process, and we also talk about some issues or resources and items on RENA allocation, which I'm sure folks have heard about what RENA is. So going to Connect SoCal. Connect SoCal, again, like I said, is a regional transportation plan. It's a 20-year, it looks out 20-25 years. In this case, it goes out to 2045. It looks out to create a vision. Obviously, the vision is not a guarantee, but it's a strong guide to how we hope to develop in our region as we grow, both in terms of households, population, and employment, and make sure that we're making adequate provisions for mobility and access to opportunities. So it's a compass. It's sort of it sort of gives us direction, and it's a vision that takes us there. And it's also a platform for us in terms of collaborating with our stakeholders across the region. Next slide. Connect SoCal as it is. I should say, for those, I always imagine people know SCAG, but for those who don't know SCAG, we are a metropolitan planning organization and a regional transportation planning agency under both federal and state law. And we cover a region that's the 6 counties and a population of just a little bit north of 19 million. And so our work is to account for planning and visioning for that capacity. We have 191 cities and 7 counties as members of SCAG. Connect SoCal is really an infrastructure strategy, investment strategy that looks to spend about $640 billion over the next 20 years. This investment is job creating. About half of that investment is actually capital improvements. The other half is to maintain and operate the things that we already have. We have to be mindful that the infrastructure of the future, most of it is already with us. We just need to take care of it and maintain it into the future. Connect SoCal, some of those projects, I should say, that are investment capital projects might be fast-tracked because of what we're hearing in terms of infrastructure investment funds that the federal government has been working on. We expect to see early dollars from that, but we also expect to see some acceleration of work in preparation for the 2028 Olympics. The plan is it sort of links our built environment, and what that means is really that the policies and projects and programs within the plan are internally consistent and woven together to be complementary, such that when you're investing in transportation, it's also supportive of housing production. And when you work on active transportation, is supportive of creating a lively and livable community. It does have significant benefit for the region. We think this program will generate an average of 432,000 jobs annually just from the investment, especially with the construction, the rich paying construction jobs that come out of the program. Next slide. Some of the significant performance that we put the plan through, and we have to do this and data verify that what we're proposing actually meets some standards. One of the standards that it does meet is it does reduce our vehicle miles traveled per capita by about 10 to 11%. And it also reduced our minutes of delay, the time we spent commuting, by about 20% between the baseline of 2018 and 2045. In other words, if all of these things are done and done as proposed, you will get that kind of a reduction per capita in the amount of time that we spend in traffic. Next slide. As we move, so we have the plan out 2020. It was approved by our regional council September of last year. As we move now into implementation and also the development of the 2024 plan, there are a number of things that are overarching priorities that we are working around that are woven into the implementation of the plan, and 6 are identified here. One is to identify areas with the most need, focusing resources on positive change so that it's not business as usual, expanding the stakeholders that we have at the table. We always expand our stakeholdership to make sure that everybody that is affected by programs in our region get to have a say in the process. So by bringing in community-based organizations, we are really enhancing our equity and engagement platform. We also wove around this an inclusive economic recovery, given the effects of the pandemic, where we've been in a recovery for the last year. We want to make sure that we're in the recovery, we don't return back to where there might still be parts of our region and economy that are left behind. So making sure that we have a broad-based recovery, and we're thinking more inclusive in terms of our recovery from the pandemic. There's obviously a focus on public health as we go through. Elements of our transportation system implicates the need for public health concern. So there is an inherent additional cost in operating like our transit system. So public health is part of our implementation strategy as we look to recovering and investing in transportation over the long run. Resilience is built into that. We want to make sure that with any pandemic or any of the shocks that we see in our system, whether it's climate effects or a pandemic or economic downturn, that we have a resiliency in our system such that we can get back to economic activity and economic vitality, which our region, quite frankly, is one of the most economically vibrant regions in the world in terms of metropolitan economies. We are about the 15th largest economy in the world. If we were a country, we would be the 15th largest GDP in the world, or 16, depending on which day you look at the numbers. We also have embedded in our consideration for implementation local capacity building. What do I mean by that? We saw with the pandemic how just about every one of our municipalities, our local government, was sort of decimated with the shutdown and the absence of revenue. We're still dealing with some vestiges of that. And so in our implementation strategy, we have this focus on looking to make sure that we're building capacity back at the local level, to make sure that we have access to both federal and state resources where possible, and bring those back to our various local communities. Next slide. Within the plan, between now and 2024 plan, there are two aspects to the strategies that we have in the plan. Some of those strategies we refer to as core vision. These are strategies that we have basically carried forward from previous plans, the 2012 plan, the 2016 plan, and into the 2020 plan. This core vision are things that are just, for us in transportation planning, regional planning, they're the right things to do. We focus on goods movement. It's a major element of our economy in Southern California. I talked about resilience and system preservation, keeping what we have and fixing it first, maintaining this focus on a transit backbone as an alternative to highway travel, make sure that we have enough transit investment to complement that. So these are all complete streets, making sure that our street systems, our roadway systems are really enhanced to provide mobility for all, whether you're walking, biking, or even on a scooter. So these are things that are, backbone strategies that we've carried forward. The key connections are strategies that are new, relatively new, and more technology enhanced. Looking at mobility as a service, for example, is something that's new. We see into the future where a number of people will not own cars, but they will still have access to cars because they deal with mobility as a service. They basically buy it as needed. And whether it's Uber, Lyft, or just having access to a vehicle when you need it in a shared environment. Creating environment in our municipalities and local government where the use of broadband is now is not just a novelty, but in fact becomes the backbone of how we do business, such that you actually reduce the need for travel in some cases because you can do more things remotely. Accelerating electrification, because we're seeing this move towards electrified transportation system, whether it's a transit system or personal mobility. So these are things that are technology enhanced, that are new strategies that are in our plan. We're going to move on to the next slide. This slide basically shows the progression towards the 2024 plan. Like I said, we just put the 2020 plan to bed. What we tend to do is take a step back and look to see what are some of the things that are inherent in our environment that we need to consider as we build the next plan. So we're looking at those elements of the foundations of the next plan. We're looking at data collection, policy areas, new policy initiatives that we need to consider. These considerations are going on and will go on for the next year or so. And then we'll begin to, once we collate all of that, we'll begin to share that information with some analysis to ensure that all of our stakeholders get a chance to see what are the foundational elements of the plan that we're developing for 2024. By that, and then by late 2023, we should have a draft document that's available for review and comment, and hopefully be able to adopt a plan in 2024. Next slide. With regards to 2024 plan, as we, like I said, as we were looking to see what are some of the foundational elements, we're seeing two key areas of focus in terms of our outlook. One is the data and the trends that we're seeing. We just got the 2020 census data is basically streaming out right now. We're beginning to look at the information that comes out of that. We're looking at opportunities to what are some ways to think about how we finance transportation, because there's never enough money to do all the things you want to do. And how do we, what are some innovative financing opportunities that we would see? How do we see mode shift occurring? People driving less because of working from home. How is that going to affect transportation in the future? Goods movement is always a key element of consideration. The data is showing that we're going to see more container movement out of the San Pedro ports, more so that they have broken all records in the last, I think the last 2 or 3 consecutive months in terms of inflows of goods, and we're beginning to see a port congestion. What does that mean, and what's implication for the rest of the region, and in fact for California? The use of aviation, where does that come in with expanded use of some of our airports, especially Ontario, and the growth in passenger travel as we rebound from the economy. And of course, housing production is another trend that's critical to us. We also see some emerging issues with the digital divide. Since the pandemic, we've seen the need for having access to broadband, not just on a affordability basis, but to have broadband access across the board, because everything that is meaningful to life now seems to be online, whether it's health, education, or work. And so being able to make sure that we close the digital divide is an element of an emerging issue for us, such that we're looking at broadband not just as a utility or service that you get, but in fact as a piece of infrastructure that we need to be more intentional in making sure that it's broadly available to all of the population out there. E-commerce, of course, is predicated on broadband. It has implications for our land use decisions and our mobility options that we have. And then with e-commerce, what's happening to some of our retail establishments that may not be competing, where those might be opportunities for mixed use opportunities, such that we can also do housing. And housing would always be, it's a current issue, it's an emerging issue, it's one that we will continue to figure out how we innovate around housing production as we work with all of our cities and counties. And then dealing with the issues of short trips, for example, the idea that we have to drive a mile or two to go get something in the grocery store because we haven't made provisions for alternatives to driving, being able to have that choice. In our planning, we don't expect to put in our own cars. In fact, we expect that there will be car ownership, but we expect also that folks will have a choice to either drive or not drive, maybe walk if you, in fact, you have the facilities and the infrastructure that allows you to walk or bike. Those are things that are under consideration as emerging issues for us. Let's go to the next slide. In the process, as we develop the plan, like I said, there's always this need for consultation and stakeholder engagement, talking to our county commissions. We have 6 county commissions that are essentially responsible for implementing projects. In the case of Orange County, OCTA is the commission. Working with all of our local jurisdictions, we do a lot of grant. We give out a lot of grants to do good planning at the local level, ensuring that we're dealing and working with them. But more importantly, the information that feeds into our plan is really a bottoms up. It's the general plans that are in every single jurisdiction. We roll that information up into the regional plan. We have policy committees at SCAG that would consider the things that I've talked about. These are made up of elected officials from across the region, and they would look at this from a regional perspective, and then give us their input as well. We also have stakeholder groups that are some of them are non-governmental, some of them are actually government staff, technical teams from the planning departments of the various jurisdictions within the region. And of course, there will be a lot of public participation as well, both in input to what information we have, but also in helping to vision where we want to go as a region. Next slide. One of the things that we have seen come out of the census lately, as a point in time here, is we know that everybody heard about the fact that we lost a congressional seat in California because our numbers were lower between the 2010 and 2020 census. And it might be misleading to think that we were actually losing population. In the census, we gained population. I think we grew about 6%, but we didn't grow as fast as the rest of the country, which was at about 7, maybe 7.5%. And as a result, we lost the congressional seat because of that slower growth. So it's more of a slower growth, but we're still growing, and we'll see additional households and jobs added to our region over time. We're added in the last 10 years, will be added even more so. However, we need to separate the trend from COVID from the general trend. There was an immediate effect of COVID that we saw, which the graph at the bottom is sort of showing you that there was a difference between, there was a lower birth rate, but there was also an increased death rate that we saw in the region in general that accounted for kind of a loss in population in that 1 year. The next slide. So we're going to go to the local, some local projects that may be familiar to you that are going on as examples. And we kind of take examples of different kinds of projects. There's a real district specific plan in Fullerton, which is a planning element that SCAG was part of. There's a Go Human event that we do Go Human events, and we're always glad to come into communities to show communities how they can implement a pedestrian and bike-friendly environment within our roadway prisons. And that's what the Go Human event is. Allows us to be able to master plan bike and ped facilities such that the community is then ready for grants at the state level. The state puts out hundreds of millions of dollars in active transportation grants, but you have to be ready and you have to have a plan. And that's the example that you have in the city of Stanton's active transportation plan. It really gets them ready to then apply for funds from the state to invest in building new bike and ped facilities that allows members of the community to travel differently and have options in their travel. All right, next slide. This is a project that I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's the 405 project. I had a privilege of working on this in my Caltrans days, and again, the project ready. This is a project that has to be or had to be in the SCAG plan for it to be funded both at the federal and state levels. And this is a very important investment in mobility in Orange County. There are, besides just the capacity that's enhanced on the main line 405 itself, there are a lot of interchanges that were also fixed that would allow for better mobility in those communities that the 405 runs through. Next slide. So wanted to talk really quickly about the future of the office. And this is one that we have been watching and it's evolving. We know that the so-called new normal will be different than what we had pre-COVID. We had, I think it was Jones and LaSalle come through and do a presentation to us at our board, one of our board meetings. And it shows that there is going to be a lasting effect of the pandemic, basically, in terms of impact on how we work. There's a new phrase now that work is not where we go, but what we do, which means it can be, for the most part, some work can be done just about from anywhere. There will still always be work that needs to be done on location, hospitals, factories, and so on. And that's understandable. There was a survey that was recently done by the California Emerging Technologies Fund in partnership with USC that showed that 91% of our residents actually have internet access. So which tells us that folks could work from home. A lot of people could work from home. There's still a minority of folks that don't have access to broadband. And that's the essence of the digital divide that we were talking about earlier on. And so we expect to continue to see people work from home, whereas we saw a trend pre-COVID where the fastest growing mode shift that we were seeing was to work from home. More and more people were choosing to work from home even before COVID, as opposed to commute. What COVID has done, what COVID-19 has done in terms of the shutdown and the need to work remotely is actually put more people in a faster track to considering working from home. And so we see that trend sustaining for a little bit, but it's going to also depend on access to broadband, which we know for now, income and racial inequalities currently exist. So there are some people that cannot afford to work from home because they just can't afford the cost of broadband at this time. And so that's an element of concern in addressing the digital divide. It's not just access to work, but also access to healthcare, access to education, as it were. We expect, though, that we were expecting that working from home will reduce folks commuting and reduce vehicle miles travel. We're seeing very quickly that the vehicle miles travel has come back. It's slightly different. There's a lot more midday trips that we're seeing in our surveillance, more so than in the past. I think the evening commute is probably just about as bad as it was, if not worse. The morning commute is a little lighter than what it used to be. So we're seeing that shift that is a result of people choosing to be in a hybrid environment where they work sometimes from home and maybe go in later in the day and things like that. The net effect still, though, is we're seeing our freeways get back to almost pre-pandemic levels in terms of congestion. And of course, transit ridership is still down because of social distancing and concern for social distancing as a result of the pandemic. The next slide. So one of the things that was obvious to us as we looked at the real estate, especially in the job centers, is there's an effect on commercial real estate. And this slide basically gave us that sense that there were some shifting strategies because of COVID, where some corporate leaders are feeling like they're going to expect to downsize because their workforce is not coming in. And it really varies because people assume all tech companies are probably just going to go 100% remote. There are some tech companies that are actually asking all the employees to come back to work because of the creative aspect of collaboration they see. There's some that are still delaying the return to the office. And so we're seeing all of this movement. We're keeping watch on it. There's a large amount of folks that are undecided, as you see in the graph. So we feel like this is going to be an evolving environment for the next year or two before it settles down. Nonetheless, I think the summation is that we expect to see more people work from home than maybe we had anticipated in our plan in 2020. And so that's going to be accounted for in our 2024 plan. This was a slide that was presented to us by JLL in terms of what the future of the workplace is. Whereas pre-COVID, most of the workspace is dominated by individual spaces, cubicles, and offices took up the larger share of the workspace for most companies. What it's tending towards right now, and we're seeing it also at SCAG, is the individual workspace is shrinking because we're in a hybrid environment. Not everybody's coming in, but we're also creating more space for collaboration because that's the essence of why we get together in the workplace anyway, is to have more collaboration, and that space is expanding, as it were. Next slide. And let's talk about RENA. So RENA is one of those things that I find is universally met with disdain, I think, across the board. And we find ourselves at SCAG being responsible for it as a result of state law. State law requires that we do this. So I kind of feel like it's a party we're required to call every 8 years that nobody really wants to come to, but where we have these mandates in state law to do RENA. What I hope it comes out of this is that folks will know that we were as diligent as we could be in the process following the requirements of state law that was given to us. We began the process way before 2019. Looking at data from local jurisdictions, sort of putting together the databases for RENA by going through and talking to a panel of experts ahead of time. We got our regional determination, which was 1.3 million units, and we pushed back at HCD because we thought that was excessive. In our calculation, in our estimation, we thought the number, based on the requirements of state law, the number that we were supposed to be planning for in the next 8 years in our region was anywhere between 800 to 900,000 units. And so we were really surprised at the 1.3 million that was imposed on us by HCD. We protested on that. We didn't succeed in having them change their minds. I think they took off about 2,700 units in that protest. The process was very transparent. From our estimation, we had several meetings of the RENA subcommittee, which were public meetings. We had extensive distribution and outreach in the process. We ended up with 52 appeals by 47 jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions not only appealed their numbers, but they also appealed other jurisdictions' numbers. So that's why you have 52 appeals, but only 47 jurisdictions. And we went through that, and I think in the end, our appeals board, which both the committee and the board were made up of elected officials, granted a couple of appeals, and they sat for 8 public meetings on appeals, 6 hours at a time, and that was the end of RENA. And then that information, once we got the appeals rounded up, we were able to put out a final RENA in March of 2021 that was approved by our regional council. The outcome of that is it now allows our local agencies, our cities and counties, to move forward with their housing element, which is now due in October. Because of the delays that we saw in our process, especially last year with COVID, and also with the delay in the adoption of the regional transportation plan, we are a little bit strapped for time for our cities to be able to get their housing elements done. And so we had been anticipating this back last year, and early last year, we were actually impressing on Sacramento, both at the governor's office, at HCD, and at the legislature, that our jurisdictions in SCAG region will really need an extension of time beyond the October date so that we're not out of compliance. We're still working on it. We're not backing off of that request yet, and we expect that at some point we'll hear from them on that, and I can talk to that a little more later if there are any questions about where that is right now. In supporting the RENA process, just to maybe take a step back and understand the methodology, because that's one of the things that SCAG was required to do, is to take the 1.3 million, create a methodology that would assign that number across the entire region. And so that methodology was predicated on where we had jobs and where we had access to mobility, such that we are not creating housing far away from jobs and far away from infrastructure. And so those were two key conditions for that went into our methodology that was approved by the Regional Council. And this map basically shows you that the housing assignments were concentrated where you have jobs and access to infrastructure. But doesn't mean though that you don't have housing assignments outside of those areas, because every single jurisdiction got assigned some measure of units across 4 income categories that they're responsible for. Next slide. So I think I've already talked about this for the most part. What's key on this slide is out of the 1.3 million units that were assigned to the SCAG region, 183,000 units were assigned to Orange County as a result of the methodology I just described, and 4,800 of those units, 4,800 units were assigned to the city of Newport Beach. To support the RENA allocation, once we knew we were getting this load of RENA, the state government, the governor's budget last year actually set aside some one-time funding for us at the regional level to help increase housing supply and work with jurisdictions to produce housing. Out of the 119 million that was set aside for regional agencies such as SCAG, we received $47 million of that because we're indeed the largest regional agency in the state. And as a result of that, our board said that we should make sure that this funding, as we push it out to our jurisdictions, that it also matches the RENA numbers as it were. And so we created a sub-regional program, 23 million, next slide, $23 million of the 47 million basically was sent out to our sub-regions. And I think about 2.5 million or so it went to Orange County to address housing related programs. And there are some that are still with us that we actually are granting out to create opportunities for more housing production, as it were. So these monies have to be spent by 2023, and we're making sure that it's spent appropriately to help local jurisdictions to create housing opportunities. Part of the money, it's called the REAP program, it's the Regional Early Action Program, to try and make sure that the money is also reaching our lower resourced communities. We have this program that was approved by the Regional Council to create a call for collaboration and bring in community-based organizations that can speak on behalf of those communities that tend to not participate in our programs. And so we've been able to award 26 projects in the process for, again, creating awareness and creating opportunities to grow housing supply in all areas of the region. We also created a technical assistance team at SCAG, and this was intended to help all of our cities, those that need help, to shorten the work and reduce the workload that it takes to create a housing element. So we had this data platform that was created that really assisted cities in site selection. And I've really been impressed with what I've heard back from those who are able to use the helper tool to identify housing locations for site locations for potential housing development, such that it helps update the housing element. We also have a technical team that created some data, because part of what you have to do in building your housing element as a city is to get approval on your databases that you send to HCD, the Housing Community Development Department at the state. And so we work with HCD to create some pre-approved data sets such that you're not having to go back and forth with HCD. If you use these data sets, you're automatically going to be approved by HCD. And so we put some work into that technical support that's available to our cities, all of our cities. Every single city has data sets that we created for them that are pre-approved data sets for housing element update. The next slide, I think that might be the last one. Well, I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions. We wanted to run through those real quickly. I know it's a lot of information, but again, I thank you for the opportunity to share what we do at SCAG, and we'll be glad to take questions.
Yeah, thank you, Comey. That was quite a comprehensive overview of all the things that are happening over at SCAG. You must be a busy guy. So we do have a few questions. We ran a little bit long, but let's see if we can at least get to the questions in the Q&A. So the first one comes from Charles Klobe, and he says, how could Orange County leave SCAG and form our own association, say an Orange County Association of Governments like SANDAG? Arguably, SCAG no longer represents Orange County. So, and I guess just to follow up with that, do you think SCAG is too big? I mean, it's clearly like covering a huge swath of California. Is it too big to plan for all those areas under one roof?
I mean, it is big, no question about that. But I think there are advantages of the size. The things that we're able to do at SCAG is enabled by the fact that we are a large entity and able to move resources and attract resources and convene and get attention at both state and federal levels. I understand the sentiment that maybe Orange County is not represented, but I honestly don't necessarily agree with that. We do our darnest to represent every part of our region. There might be some disagreements on maybe issues, and we can resolve that. In terms of the essence of the question, how Orange County leads SCAG, there are processes. I think we can work with anybody that wants to address those processes. We're not created by law, for example. So and that's one thing to keep in mind. So we are a voluntary organization at SCAG, and so we can work on that. But the assignment of being an MPO and an RTPA is one that's a state and federal assignment. And so you're going to need to engage all levels of government on that.
Okay, well, certainly if Orange County left, it would create the donut in the donut, the hole in the donut, right? From Rush Hill, he's asking, how does SCAG work with the TCA, the Toll Road Authority? Are you supportive of non-government funding of our necessary transportation systems?
I'm not sure about unnecessary. I mean, nobody should be funding. Did you say unnecessary?
No, necessary transportation.
Oh yeah.
Do you support, TCA building roads in Orange County? I guess is what he's asking.
Yeah, we work at TCA. All of their projects have to be in our program, so we work with them. Sam's a good friend. We basically plan keeping all of those infrastructure elements in mind, because TCA is a major element of our mobility in Southern California. In terms of investing, non-governmental investment, one of the assignments I had at Caltrans before coming to SCAG was to lead the public-private partnership program. And the essence of that is to bring private equity investment into highway transportation improvements. And we did that successfully in building the Presidio Parkway project in San Francisco. That was $1 billion program that was basically financed using private equity and then with availability payments over time. Sometimes you use toll revenues to pay back those investments because, again, like any private equity, they need to make some money back. But we find that there is, in fact, a public good in being able to attract those investments, because then you can get construction and projects built in time, as opposed to the delays of waiting for successive planning and programming years on the public side. You're muted, Steve.
I was saying it certainly seems as if the infrastructure bill passes in Congress, that there'll be maybe a little less need for private funding, as the spigots will be open for your projects. Alberta, you want to take the next one?
Sure. Dave Simpson has a question here. Can you expand on SCAG's work and regional council's action on broadband issues and digital divide? Is SCAG tracking how public agencies may spend ARPA funds in this space?
We're very involved. I'm particularly very involved in the broadband discussions in the region. We actually were looking to form a consortium that would include both Orange County and LA County, because in fact, Orange County is the only county that does not have or never had a consortium, a broadband consortium formed. So we were looking to create one that joins with LA to create this capacity for broadband investments. It's in the discussions on broadband, which came out of trying to figure out how we become resilient for the next pandemic. Broadband became one of the items to work on, and the closing of the digital divide became an imperative. It's in the working of that we came up with what it was going to cost to close the digital divide. We estimated for our region, for Southern California, it was going to be about $8 billion, and work those numbers. And we ended up with $6 billion in the governor's budget this year. But there's another 60 or so, 65 billion at the federal level broadband that we're hoping to attract to the region. SCAG, really where we want to position ourselves is to help bring as much resources to the region as possible. We're not an implementing agency. We don't build stuff, but we help bring resources. And we want to make sure those resources go to the right entities that would actually be involved in infrastructure improvements in the region.
Great. Here's one in the chat. Actually, we'll bring this back to Newport Beach, and it's something I put a little comment on myself here. So how involved do you get in airport transportation? So in particular, the question's asking, is airport included in the plan and regional transportation issues? And, you know, especially with obviously John Wayne Airport's important in Newport Beach and Orange County in general. But I mean, how involved are we looking at some of these other underutilized airports like Ontario and Long Beach? I'm not sure about Burbank. It's a regional airport, you know, if that's underutilized as well. But my sense of it is that the bulk of it falls on LAX, and then, you know, the rest of it's down here and at John Wayne. And the other airports have a lot of extra capacity that's not being utilized.
Yeah, actually, great question. We do, in fact, consider aviation. Now, we're not responsible for behind, you know, the gates activities. What we're most concerned about is the travel in and out of the airport, because all of those trips in and out of the airport are on our system as a region. So we are very, we pay attention to the boardings that each airport has, and that's part of our planning. John Wayne has a cap on its capacity just by nature of the way it's situated and its size, and so we've kept that in consideration in our planning, where there's almost no growth in terms of the boardings at John Wayne, whereas you'll see a lot of growth in LAX. You'll see a lot of growth in Ontario in terms of planning over the next 20 years. So yeah, so the airports are very important, more so now, even for freight. And we're seeing It used to be high value freight, but we're seeing more regular freight be part of the mix at the airports. And so it's not just vehicles that go in and out of the airport to pick people up and drop people off. We're also seeing trucks and sort of drayage type movement from airports because of air freight. So there's a lot of consideration for access to airports.
So Rush Hill has another question here. If the California governor is recalled, do you see a possible change in the required RENA numbers? Do you believe the foundation for the established state mandate accurate?
So
not to make it political.
Yeah, no. I mean, the recall, I honestly don't know that affects anything. Somebody would have to call back the numbers, and it's an artifact of state law. It's not; these are not things that are done capriciously. The number was given to us because the law required HCD to give us a number. Now, is it possible for a new governor to come in and say, start over? Well, that's possible, but it's going to have other implications that somebody will probably think through and may be hard pressed to take that initial action because of all the things that will be part of that domino. So yeah, it's possible that the number, in terms of possibilities, that the numbers could be recalled if there's a new governor. But I would not be holding my breath that would be the first thing a new governor will come in and want to deal with. I think the other part of the question is whether or not I believe in the foundation that was established in the state mandate. We already positioned ourselves to say that the number that we were given was excessive from our perspective at SCAG. We did a lot of work. The way the process works is SCAG as an NPO, as a regional agency, was required to prepare the databases for determination of what your housing need is. And then you submit that package to HCD for their consideration. And they'll take it under advisement and then come back and give us a determination based on their authority under state law. So they could give us more or less of whatever we ask for. Typically, they give you more anyway. They just give us a lot more. And the law allowed us to push back. There's an objection that's allowed, one objection allowed under law, which we took and expressed very clearly where we thought they erred in their consideration. And they came back and determined that we didn't have a case. And there's really no appeal other than, considering litigation, which we did consider, and our board did not choose to move forward with litigation.
Oh, okay, we're running a little bit late, but I do want to ask this one last question because I did notice this myself when you showed the map there where how the units were allocated, and it was obviously bright orange or red in Orange County, especially through the central corridor there. And so George Leslie is asking the question: it seems like the RENA mandate is to make crowded areas more crowded by imposing mandates that almost nobody wants. Why not emphasize spreading out the population? Have you considered this? And so, I've heard it said that, if you widen the freeways, they'll build more homes, more people will come, the freeways will get crowded again. And I understand, I think you expressed the philosophy that you're trying to allocate the housing where the jobs are, which I guess would cut down commute times and transportation and things like that. But I guess I would counter, or my question would be, in addition to George's, is that if you don't build more housing there, obviously the cost of labor increases, and businesses, I would think, would tend to seek out lower cost labor and start to move out into maybe Riverside, San Bernardino, the outlying counties, and closer to their workers or potential workers that could cost them a lot less. So is it the chicken and egg thing, or do you buy into any of that, or is that just not the way it happens?
I think there is some validity to the question. It's a good question. I mean, these are questions that we were running through as we were working on methodology. First of all, the RENA numbers they're actually considered a floor. They're just a mandate, but you can build beyond your RENA numbers, and some of the communities are going to build beyond their RENA numbers because they have the capacity to. There's no law that stops them from building in excess of their RENA numbers. So there will be there will be folks that build in the Inland Empire beyond maybe the numbers that we assign them. There was just a need for some logic in the methodology for assigning 1.3 million. You know, if you look at the numbers assigned to Orange County in total is less than Orange County's proportionate share of population in the region. Whereas the number that's assigned in LA is in excess of LA County's proportion in population. So we have about 30% of the numbers actually are assigned in LA and about 14% or less in Orange County, whereas Orange County accounts for about 17% of the population of the region. So while you look at that number and it looks like red in there, I think the intent is to make sure that we are efficiently using the capacities and the infrastructure that we've already built, and make sure that we're not creating additional stresses on ourselves where we need to now chase development with investments that we don't have. So that's one logic, and you know, good people could disagree on some of these things.
Okay, on that note, we'll leave it lay right there. It's, you know, I had a whole bunch of other questions. Maybe we'll have to have you come back for a GISE part 2.
We'll be glad to come back anytime.
The GISE, the sequel, right?
I hope it's in person the next time we do this.
Yeah, in person. I hope that next month we will be in person.
Absolutely.
I think it's a better meeting, and that we would have given, you know, people the ability to you know, meet you up front and ask them the questions themselves. I much prefer that the questions be answered by the questioner.
Absolutely.
So with that,
if there are questions you want us to address and send back to people, by all means, send them to us. We'll make our questions, our answers available as needed.
Thank you. So right now we'll move on to the second portion of our Government Affairs Committee meeting, and we have, I think, 3 of the legislative reps with us. So I'm going to pull them up here and promote them to be able to give their updates of what their offices are doing. So why don't we start with Alexander Kim, since he's the first on my list.
Good morning.
Good morning. Allowed to talk. Here we go. Oh, actually, I need to promote him to a panelist here. Hang on a second, Alexander.
Sure.
Yeah, there we go. Promote to panelist. Okay. There he is.
Hey,
And
good
Alex is
morning.
with Cotty Petrie Norris's office.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm the district director for the 74th district that represents Newport Beach. I'll just try to keep it brief. So I know we're a little bit running for time here. So I'll mention about a few things. One is that we'll have a press conference, actually in joint with our county supervisor friends. We're doing a check presentation to the Be Well Orange County, Be Well OC. So they specialize in mental health care, and they're providing the county for the first ever sobering station based in the city of Orange. And the county given already used to be the mental health ad hoc committee. That's how it started in 2015. And, you know, they committed $16.6 million to have their first of 3 campuses. The first one is the one we're focusing on. And the state of California, through our office and other offices, is giving $7 million to this, to support in partnership with our local government, the county level, to do this culmination of a public-private partnership. And how Newport Beach is connected to this is we have the various private partners, Hoag Presbyterian, Providence, then we have Kaiser Permanente, Cal Optima. So they're part of this as well. And basically this first campus will provide featuring 93 beds and the capacity to treat about 100 people each day. So this is focusing on mental health and also with people that are suffering from drug abuse. And as you know, I know that the Steve and Alberto hosted a forum with Sheriff Don Barnes. Was it 2 weeks ago? It's been so, I think it was last week, I'm sure.
Last week.
Yeah, last week in person. And then he expressed the epidemic, and not just COVID. I mean, this is a serious thing where you have fentanyl abuse rising 1,000% in Orange County. So in lieu of what my boss, our assembly member, Cody Petrie Norris, has done to include fentanyl in as part of the legislation, is in line with other types of substance abuse, such as heroin, cocaine, and things, to really treat it as a serious matter. So part of this is the after effects of making sure that these people are treated, and going from there. So that's one that'll be a press conference tomorrow at noon. Other couple things more on the lighter note. We had a nonprofit of distinction for 2021, and we held it virtually a few weeks ago. The Pacific Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach was the nonprofit distinction, but we did focus on our 5 other cities, and the one I wanted to highlight is from Newport Beach, Project Self-Sufficiency, and their role is doing a lot of work to ensuring single parents able to achieve their academic goals and ensuring economic self-reliance. So we're very proud that Newport Beach, they're a nonprofit of distinction. And lastly, we have a beach cleanup happening in Saturday, September 18th. So all this is on our website. It'll be at the Crystal Cove. It's with Crystal Cove Conservancy in Newport Beach. So I'll make sure to send a link to Steve to send up to on your next fabulous newsletter and vlog. So
We don't have any trash on the beach in Newport.
Well, we'll keep it as that.
After you're done.
Yeah. So I'm done.
No, I mean after you're done cleaning it up.
Oh yeah, after done. Well, I expect you, Steve, to be there. So, and Alberto,
There you go.
if you're free.
Very
Great.
good.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Next up is Andrew Giovanna, and he represents Congresswoman Michelle Steele. So let me promote you to panelist, Andrew. You can join us. There he is. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Steve. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. It's great to be here. Great to see everyone again. Happy to provide a few big updates from the end of July that are of particular interest to Newport Beach. Although Congress is currently in fall recess, I'll start first with the sand replenishment effort that the Congresswoman's been working on. I want to make sure we're all up to speed on that. The language providing for $15.5 million to go towards sand replenishment has been included in the latest energy and water development and related agency funding bill. It's quite a mouthful of a bill. Happy to forward that along. But it's a regular annual budgetary item for this, and that language has been included. This bill then went on and passed the House, so that's very exciting. And as of August 4th, the Senate Committee on Appropriations has approved their version of the bill by a vote of 25-5. So next, it goes to the Senate once recess is finished here, and then it goes to the White House. So I will definitely keep you apprised on that. That's been an exciting development. Number two, I've mentioned prior to this, but I just want to make sure we're all aware of Representative Steele's appointment to the Transportation and Infrastructure Aviation Subcommittee. And she joined the Bipartisan Quiet Skies Caucus at the beginning of this year. And that's especially relevant. You know, aviation has been obviously a long-standing topic here. And it's very complex. However, she's been getting engaged on this. She submitted language on behalf of the city of Newport Beach, sharing their concerns that the FAA has not adequately engaged with the community, and urged them to meet with interested members of the public, including community groups and local elected officials. So The FAA would need to report on their actions to hold these meetings and how they plan to accommodate all local community meeting requests. And the Transportation Appropriations Bill includes language adding $8 million for expanding community engagement. So that's awesome. So we're excited about that, but we Congresswoman is she does not think 8 million is enough. So I think that'll be something that she continues to bring up. She is an original co-sponsor of the Noise Mitigation, Repair, and Replacement Program Act, which would help communities with repairing or replacing noise mitigation on homes and businesses by allowing airport improvement program funds to be available for that. And finally, on this note, on Thursday, July 15th, the representative participated in a Quiet Skies Caucus briefing, where she reiterated the importance of meeting with local communities outside of the FAA's formal roundtable process. So just continuing to hold them to account for this. They're obviously a major stakeholder in this conversation. That's something she's continuing and insisting on doing. And then finally, our office will be hosting a Service Academy information session. This will be taking place on Monday, August 23rd in Fountain Valley at 6 p.m. and will feature representatives from the U.S. military, naval, Air Force, and Merchant Marine academies. Our field representative, Austin Mejia, will be leading that event. So if you or anyone you know is interested in benefiting from that event, please RSVP by emailing Austin at austin.mejia@mail.house.gov. Of course, I'm going to forward this digital flyer with all this relevant information and contact to Steve. And again, anyone who has my contact information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to get you what you need. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Just quickly, with the Congresswoman being on the Infrastructure Committee, has she stated her position on the bipartisan Senate infrastructure bill?
Yeah, thanks. Not yet. That is something that is still being debated and deliberated. I will follow up once that is a public position she has, but it's one of the more controversial issues at the moment. So
really, the infrastructure is controversial, huh?
so it goes. But no, at the moment, not publicly, but I'd be happy to provide that update as soon as that's available.
Okay, if
Well,
you would,
I'm sure there's many people who want to discuss that with the Congresswoman, including UCI.
Absolutely, absolutely.
well, I think Comey's counting on those funds to show up here in Southern California, so hopefully she'll get with the program.
Absolutely. And again, Steve, you have my contact. For anyone else who does not yet, I'd be happy to forward that along, so that I want to make sure I'm giving you these updates, because I think the next one of these is going to be just before the Senate comes back and the House. So, but either way, I just want to keep you all apprised. So if you don't have my contact, I'll make sure you get it today.
Yeah, please actually leave it in the chat. One of our participants, George Leslie, asked for it, for your contact information.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, so with that being said, Avery Counts with Katrina Foley's office was on the call, but he seemed to have left. So that concludes our legislative representatives' presentations. Dave's Min office couldn't be here with us this morning either. I would like to add that we have some upcoming events that you may be interested in. Tomorrow we have our barbecue on the patio, the last one of the summer. It should be a lot of fun. It starts at 4:30 and it goes to about 6. So if you're looking for something to do Friday afternoon on your way home from work, stop off and say hello. Next week on Thursday, the 26th, we'll be having our monthly sunset mixer at Lido House Hotel on the peninsula on the rooftop. So that's always a lot of fun. It's exciting to get together with other chamber members. So you're encouraged to join us. Chamber members are free. And if you're not a member, but you're thinking about joining the chamber, call us and we'll put you on the guest list. Otherwise, it's $35 to attend. Of course, legislative reps are in for free. So I'll expect to see both of you guys there. Our next Wake Up Newport meeting will be September 2nd. Alberto, I know you're muted, but do you want to announce who our speaker is at Wake Up Newport? We're back in person there at the library. Starts at doors open at 7. Program starts at 7:45. And who's going to be our speaker?
We are super excited to announce that it's UCI Chancellor Howard Gilman.
So Alberto's going to need to be on his best behavior because that's his boss. Well, it's actually 3 bosses probably above him, but it's still his boss. Yeah, we're excited to have Howard. He's been a speaker in the past at Wake Up Newport several years back, and always a informative, great speaker. And I'm sure there's lots going on at UCI, with how they're going to be approaching education this winter, fall and winter, with the COVID and the vaccinations and all that stuff that goes around. Plus funding, and maybe we'll get an update on the what's it called, the
UCI Medical Center Irvine.
Oh, well, that was one of them. I was thinking about the Brilliant Future campaign. How that's
right,
going.
right.
Yeah, that was launched just before COVID hit, right?
It was
A couple of years ago. So we'll
Our
be interested to
goal
hear.
our goal to raise $2 billion.
$2 billion. That's a lot of money. So I'll let him announce where they are. So we'll keep that as a teaser for the meeting. And again, that's in person at in the Friends Room at the main library in Fashion Island there on Avocado Street on September 2nd. And with that being said, I think, and then I'll just mention our first major civic event post-COVID, or I guess we're not post-COVID, but post reopening for events, is our Fire and Lifeguard appreciation dinner at the Hyatt Hotel on Jamboree Road. That's going to be on September 9th. We're actually pretty much sold out on that event, which I want to thank all the people and the sponsors for buying tables and buying tickets. So it's a very uplifting event that we do every year for the fire and lifeguards, honoring their service, and we'll be presenting the firefighter of the year and the lifeguard of the year and seasonal lifeguard of the year, those awards at that time, and that's going to be September 9th. It's I think it goes from 5:30 to 8:30. So that about wraps it up. Anything else on your end, Alberto?
I'm good. Have a great morning, Newport Beach.
Okay, and have a great morning, Irvine. And you too as well, gentlemen. Thank you. And thank you, Kome. I forgot you were still there. We really appreciate you spending the last hour with us and bringing us up to speed on all things Southern California. So,
Well, thank you so much. Enjoyed it.
Yes.
Have a good day, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.